There it is, folks. There it is. It's a historic evening. We're here on the campus of Howard University. You can see behind me. This historic night. The line is really something to get a chance to see.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We want to welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. My return guest for today's special broadcast is Professor Nadia B. Ahmad, and our topic for discussion is After the Vote, What Comes Next? You just saw a small piece of video courtesy of our brother Abdul Rahman Muhammad, who is an alumni of Howard University, one of the leading HBCUs here in America. It also happens to be the alma mater of Vice President Kamala Harris. And it was on this university campus that she and her camp decided to have their watch party on Election Day. So that little piece of video you saw at the beginning was just a small snapshot of what the campus looked like on Election Day here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. It was a day that began as a day of excitement, a day of excited expectation. But, you know, as the day wore on into the evening, especially as in the latter part of the evening when tallies were being made from around the country, the mood no doubt became very somber. And it became very somber, I should say. I'm sorry. And that somber mood no doubt turned for many into, I guess it could only be described as a state of depression. An election that many thought should have been won easily by the Democratic candidate was lost. And it was a crushing blow for many. Before we bring our guest on, I'm going to share some food for thought, just a little bit of background food for thought. And but before we do that, there are two other short back-to-back videos I'd like for us to see. One is a video of a political analyst by the name of Jeffrey Sachs. What he has to say about one of the returning president's frontline allies. And then the second video is the man who just made a bit of history himself. Let's see those two pieces of video, Brother Sadiq.
Dark son of a, sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually.
If you take out Saddam, I guarantee you, that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory toppling the governments of Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a, sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony.
There is a Muslim problem in the world.
But you do believe overall there is a Muslim problem in the world?
Well, there is a Muslim problem, absolutely. You just have to turn on your television set. I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there.
Did you mean all 1.6 billion Muslims?
I mean a lot of them. You look at what's happening with the Quran, it's a pretty scary thing. There's something there that teaches some very negative vibe. They do not respect us at all. Large portions of a group of people, Islam, large portions want to use very, very harsh means. You have more than a handful of moderate Muslims, but you certainly have a problem with Muslims.
Within the Muslim community, we have some very radical people who want to do great harm to you and to Joe and to everybody on your panel and to me and to this country and to the world. There's a level of hatred within a certain community, in this case the Muslim community.
I want surveillance of certain mosques, okay? If you have people coming out of mosques with hatred and with death in their eyes and on their minds, we're going to have to do something. They're trying to take over our children and convince them how wonderful ISIS is and how wonderful Islam is, and we don't know what's happening. And we have to look at the Muslims, and we have to do something. We cannot stand by and be the stupid people while our country is destroyed.
25% of the Muslims living in the United States agreed that violence against Americans here in the United States is justified.
27%, could be 35%, would go to war. I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down. Okay, so remember this. So listen. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
They would say, "Are you Muslim?"
And if they said yes, they would not be allowed in the country.
That's correct. Why aren't we letting the Christians in? Why are we letting the Muslims in?
You tell me. You're saying no.
We have a major, major problem. This is, in a sense, this is a war. And we have to stop the Muslims until we find out what's going on. Does that make sense, by the way? Until we find out.
Yes, indeed. We are in for some difficult days ahead. Donald Trump is he's only the second former president to return to the White House after leaving in U.S. history. The other was Grover Cleveland, who occupied the White House from 1885 to 1889, and then returned to occupy it again from 1893 to 1897. Trump is the first convicted felon to be elected president of the United States. Again, we've got some difficult days ahead. And it's imperative that committed Muslims and conscious and committed non-Muslims engage in as much damage control as we possibly can going forward, both within our ranks and beyond. My read on the election results is as follows. The final electoral vote tally, according to what I've read, was Trump with 295 electoral votes, Harris with 226. Now, there is, in my humble opinion, there's if not clear evidence, there is strong a strong suggestion that there was some shenanigans that went on with this, with the way that this vote was conducted. Subhanallah, it's just my gut feeling. Okay, nothing factual to base it on. It's just my gut feeling, based upon some of the efforts that were being made, that I am aware of, that have been documented. In fact, there's a recent a 1-hour documentary that just recently came out that showed how efforts were being made in different parts of the country to deny eligible voters, especially African American voters, black and brown voters, the ability to exercise their right. But we'll leave that aside for the moment. The second point being, the estimate is that the Green Party finished with between 0.4 and 0.9% of the vote, not even 1% of the vote, in 38 states. Now, I can't help but wonder if this is a deliberate undercount. I mean, given the fact that in 2016, Dr. Jill Stein and her then running mate, representing the Green Party, reportedly got 1.5 million votes. All right. In fact, she was accused of being responsible for denying Hillary Clinton the vote. She took votes away from Hillary Clinton and caused her defeat against Donald Trump. But she got 1.5 million votes in 2016. And not even half that in this election. Where you had so many Muslims and non-Muslims in different parts of the country that were riled up because of Gaza and because of the genocide that's been taking place and the ethnic cleansing that's going on in other parts of Palestine. I mean, people were really, really riled up, and I witnessed, and many others did as well, an unprecedented show of support for the Green Party. But they got less than half this year of what they were able to achieve in 2016. That is very, very difficult for me to believe. Now, it is said New Jersey is reportedly the state where the Green Party received the most votes, and the vote count for New Jersey was 34,953. Now, in Dearborn, Michigan, where 55% of the population is of Middle Eastern heritage, Trump reportedly received 42.8% of the vote. Stein, 18%. Now, this and Kamala Harris got less of a percentage than Stein and than the Green Party did. This is believable given the outrageous comments that were made by one of the Democratic functionaries, former President Bill Clinton, when he visited Michigan in support of the Harris campaign. I mean, the outrageous rhetoric that he engaged in, it was so deeply offensive. And there were two thoughts that came to my attention when I saw what Bill Clinton had to say. First thing was, whoever recommended or facilitated his being one of the speakers for Michigan, they should have been demoted. in that campaign. That was a very, very poor decision. And again, what he had to say was outrageous. The second thing that came to mind was when I heard what Clinton said before that crowd that he addressed in Michigan. My gut feeling then was that she was going to lose that battleground state, and she did. In fact, she lost, according to the stats, she lost in all of the battleground states. It's really shocking. The Steinware vote count, total vote count, is reportedly 628,129, far below the 1.5 million votes they got in 2016. And again, this is very, very, very difficult for me to believe. Another point worthy of reflection is the fact that while the pro-Israel propagandists would have us believe that the Gaza genocide was not a primary factor in the outcome of this election, all I've been hearing about is the economy. Yes, the economy is an issue that always is a factor in who wins and who loses. It's always a factor in the election. But subhanAllah, to discount the genocide, I mean, this is deliberate disinformation on the part of the media and the political pundits. There's no question at all but that Gaza had a heavy role in the way that this election that just, in fact, it hasn't completely ended, played out. One of the other things that's important to note is that the Republicans have taken control of the Senate, of the U.S. Senate, and the House is still a question mark. Which party is going to have control of the U.S. House of Representatives? I too am wondering about the majority of state legislatures. I haven't seen any finite statistics on which party is going to have control of the majority of state legislatures, but we've got a return guest who is one of the insiders. She is a Democratic insider. She is a Democratic delegate. She is a very knowledgeable sister, a very principled sister, and we want to welcome our sister, Dr. Nadia B. Ahmad, to today's conversation, and she will help us go through some of this this stuff that not only the United States but other parts of the world are going to have to deal with in the days ahead. Assalamu alaikum, my sister.
Walaikum assalam, Brother Mauri. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you, sis?
I'm doing well. I wanted to get to the point about the article and the work that you're talking about, Jeffrey Sachs, who's a Columbia professor. He had written an article recently about the BRICS summit that was held in Kazan, Russia. And he said that this basically marked the end of U.S. neoconservative ambitions for global hegemony that had been articulated in Brzezinski's The Grand Chessboard. And so most of the audience in South Africa knows, but BRICS stands for those in the US, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And so since the 1990s, American foreign policy has really followed this pattern of war, regime change, and economic sanctions. However, the Kazan Declaration, which was signed by about 35 different countries, represents about half of the world's population, and all of them are calling for a multipolar world that's rooted in equality, multilateralism, and the respect for the UN Charter, and that's explicitly a rejection of US dominance. And so what you're also seeing in this election is a rejection of US dominance overseas as well. And so I think that's also important to kind of fit that into the frame also, is that countries around the world are standing up against the United States, even though what we're also seeing is that what Trumpism also is bringing is a replacement to the US's global hegemony and the concerns that are really causing parts of the country to crumble from within.
Yes, indeed. And what about that piece of video that we saw of Mr. Trump engaging? Those were different pieces of him in different spaces, expressing his concern about the Muslim threat here in the United States. What are your thoughts on that? And
well,
the record vote, number of votes that he was able to get in the state of Michigan, and no doubt in a number of other battleground states. I mean, he took all of the battleground states, from my understanding. I don't know, what the what the space was between him and Vice President Harris in most of those areas, but we do know that in Michigan, I mean, he was the overwhelming favorite in terms of being the vote getter, and she came in under Jill Stein and the Green Party, which again didn't surprise me, given the offense, the great offense that she and her campaign caused in the state of Michigan, and that offense being compounded by representatives like former President Bill Clinton.
I think that after the election is over, for some people it's like a moment of jubilation, and for others it really feels like a crushing blow, especially after organizing, mobilizing, advocating for change. And what you saw in Michigan was clear support for Jill Stein from the Muslim community as well as the Arab community. And for them, for those voters, they wanted to break away from a two-party system. And so they decided that they were going to they had a choice from a place of principled disillusionment. At the same time, there was a lot of people who may have supported Jill Stein, who I like the numbers that you're showing in terms of they don't match up in terms of the support for Jill Stein and what the actual outcome was. There may have been some undercounting of the vote, but there may have also been people who opted not to participate and vote at all in the election. Yeah. And so that's why I think those numbers are lower than expected. And there's also people who just decided that they didn't want to take that principled stance and they wanted to vote for Trump instead. And so I think that may account for it. And I also don't think that Jill Stein was ever in a position to get close to 5% of the vote in terms of when her campaign started to take off. It never got a full endorsement, even from the Muslim community, until maybe just a few weeks before. And to build up that grassroots campaign to get 5% of the vote, it requires at least 18 months of preparation and hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, there's billionaires who've run before and they haven't been able to get past 2 or 3%. And so I think that that's also something about the political reality that we need to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. But tell me this: do you in between 0.4 and 0.8 or 9%? I mean, this was the parameter that I've been seeing, between 0.4 and 0.8 or 9, whatever that top figure was. But again, not even 1%. I mean, you have a better, I think, read on things than I would have, because you have been operating within the realm of how this political machinery works, how this whole process works. For me, I mean, I don't recall the level of emotion and the level of outspoken organizing taking place in 2016, as we saw, in the latter part of this campaign, this presidential campaign. Yes, I mean, Harris got off to a late start. I mean, Joe Biden was forced, quite unexpectedly, forced off the ticket. And he was forced off the ticket because of Gaza, not because he had a bad day on in a debate. It was Gaza that and them seeing the clear stats indicating that he was not going to be able to survive, that resulted in him throwing in the towel and endorsing his vice president. And then, even though that happened late, the amount of emotion and the amount of energy and the amount of activism. I mean, even in terms of money, I've been hearing that the amount of money that she brought in, that Vice President Harris brought in, even with that late start, was record breaking for the Democratic Party. I mean, this is what I read. So, I mean, there was just so much energy, so much resource, so much emotion, so much active campaigning for and against that poured into this election, this rather unprecedented election season of ours. It's hard for me to believe that Stein and the Green Party didn't at least equal what they did in 2016. It's hard for me to believe that, but
for me, it's believable because a lot of the people who voted for Jill Stein in 2016 decided not to vote for her in 2024, and so she was getting new voters in 2024, and so those people were primarily progressives who voted for her. She didn't have support from the Muslim community at that time, and so this was in 2016 where you had a large Bernie movement, and so all those people who had organized behind Bernie decided that they were going to support Jill Stein, and that was a space that you and I did not operate in that space. Like, we weren't organizing in that space. Like, I know I wasn't. I don't think you were either at that time. Whereas now all those people had decided that they were going to support Kamala Harris, and so the Muslim community. The numbers are around 1.1 to 1.4% of the electoral voting population. And so if you got everybody out, only half of them would have supported Jill Stein. And so that's why the numbers match. I mean, I would see hard for her to get past 0.7%. Like, they would be very hard for her to break 1%.
Oh, okay. That's a very good point. I'm glad that you mentioned Bernie Sanders, because yes, he did generate quite a bit of excitement before he caused the emotional crash that he did when he bowed out. He allowed the powers that be within the Democratic Party to persuade him to bow out, which became, for me, because I was going to vote for Bernie Sanders myself. I was planning to vote for him myself. And I was very disappointed with him when he threw in the towel the way that he did.
And that number percentage was around 15 to 20 to 25% of the Democratic Party at that point in 2016.
Okay.
So we didn't have those numbers now, and so that's why those Jill Stein numbers were higher in 2016.
Okay, it makes sense now. Thank you, sis. All right, so the big question for today's broadcast. After the vote, what comes next? Let's do this. I should have taken a break after that rather long introduction of mine. Let's go to a commercial break, and then we will come back with that question. I want you to weigh in on the question of what comes next now from your insider perspective, and inshallah ta'ala, we'll flesh that out on the other side of this commercial break.
Our brothers and sisters in Palestine are enduring unimaginable hardships. Ashraful Aid teams are on the ground delivering crucial aid to those in need. But we can't do it alone. Palestine is suffering and they need your help. Your support can make a world of difference. Visit www.ashrafulaid.org today and donate to bring hope, relief, and healing to those who are in need.
Hey Gulam, did I return your lawnmower last month? No. Trust.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza.
This house I'm standing on is completely destroyed. This war should stop. These 5 houses was full of civilians. We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. People gathering here trying to help people. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed.
This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments.
Hamza Sha'alan, Rafah border, Gaza.
Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Okay, welcome back. Today we are dealing with the question after the 2024 vote. What comes next? And we have with us our sister, Dr. Nadia B. Ahmad, to help us weigh in on this thought-provoking question. What are your thoughts, Sister Nadia?
And another reason I think to look at the collapse of the Democrats from 2016, because there's a lot of takeaways from 2016 was also who was steering the party, the Democratic Party at that time, where you had Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the congresswoman from Florida, who is very strong cheerleader for Israel. And then you also had the election later on between Tom Perez and Keith Ellison, and Keith Ellison was the stronger candidate, but he wasn't allowed to really take up the mantle. And so right now you're going to have a power grab within the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party is essentially in disarray at this point. And so they have essentially ignored a lot of key warnings that had come out. They dismissed any concerns that were brought forward by minority or progressive communities. They pushed away voices like ours. And so this is their failure to adapt and listen that has now created a void for them. What Donald Trump and the GOP did is they actually went out and fought for those votes. Like, as strange as it seemed, they really wanted to get the Muslim vote and they fought for it. Whereas the Democratic Party was like, oh, no, we're okay. And so I think we need to see what was the impact of that. And so right now, I think for the Democratic Party, they need to start to stick to their principles, as well as cut out more of the distractions and really following the people that have led them down a really poor path, including Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And I think another thing I think is important to realize is that this was a red wave or a red tsunami. And you know, early in the year when we were in the primary season, I had warned them repeatedly that your convention is in Chicago. Remember what happened in 1968. In 1968, Nixon won, and it was a landslide election during the height of the Vietnam War. He had 301 electoral votes at that electoral college points, and so that's about the same number that Donald Trump has, because they completely ignored the impacts of the foreign wars overseas, as well as the economic crisis that was taking shape. And so if you think about a tsunami, it's essentially silent until it's not. And sometimes there's going to be some warning signs when there's a tsunami, like there may be an earthquake or an underwater volcano, but basically you don't know you're experiencing a tsunami until you're under it. And so the tsunami is going to have like very devastating impacts. And the Democrats were essentially ignored whatever warning signs they had, and they just were not understanding the pulse of the people. And in terms of where we go forward now, I think we need to keep doing what we were doing before. And so, for example, your work on decarceration, my work on disaster resilience, there's also other work out there on deportations and corporate accountability. So all that work has to really continue going forward.
Indeed. There's also work that needs to be done internally. There's a repair that needs to take place among the Muslims themselves. There's another piece of video that I'd like for us to see and then for you to comment on. This is a representative voice from the first abandoned Biden, which later became the abandoned Harris movement. I'd like for us to see this piece of video of this brother expressing a strong critique, and then us having some discussion on what this critique symbolizes, with respect to the work that needs to be done internally among the Muslims. Let's see that video, Brother Sadiq.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. On October 31, 2023, after our deadline and ultimatum for Joe Biden to call for and enforce a permanent, unconditional ceasefire went unmet, we launched the Abandoned Biden movement. When Biden announced he would not seek re-election, we did not celebrate. There was no victory. The apparatus that enabled and emboldened Joe Biden as he funded and backed the genocide remained alive and well, propped up by Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Brett McGurk, and his number 2, Vice President Kamala Harris. On August 19, after giving Kamala Harris nearly 4 weeks to distance herself from Biden's monstrous foreign policy, we saw her allegiance clearly. She chose to walk in Biden's blood-soaked footsteps. We relaunched as Abandon Harris, calling on all people of conscience to vote third party. On October 7th, at the insistent urging of our community, we endorsed Green Party presidential candidate Dr. Jill Stein and her running mate Dr. Butch Ware to unify our protest vote. But let there be no misunderstanding. We told our supporters plainly that if they did not share this endorsement, they should still vote third party. Sitting out this election was never an option. This is not a victory speech, but we will not let this moment pass without congratulating the Muslim American community for its unprecedented stand. No minority group in the United States has come together so powerfully to draw a red line, and in circumstances as dire as these in modern history. True courage doesn't wait for permission, and principles are not accessories to be discarded when stakes are high. By holding this line, our community has displayed a rare and genuine integrity, one that shines in the face of extreme adversity. To those who stood by and watched, consider this our condolences. To every person who fancied themselves righteous, to those who postured as morally superior, you have exposed yourselves. For 14 months, you saw the images. Children beheaded, dismembered, orphaned, and did nothing. You saw videos of women torn apart by bombs, gunned down, mourning the erasure of entire bloodlines, and still you did nothing. You saw men crushed to death by tanks, lined up and executed, raped in Israeli prisons, and nothing moved you. Those of you with even a shred of self-awareness will come to realize you lost more than an election. You minimized and dismissed a genocide, funded by your tax dollars, your compliance, and your silence. You didn't just lose the election, you lost your humanity. Spare us the patronizing responses of, "Good luck under Trump." Our efforts for justice have always relied on people of conscience, and this past year has made it clear you have none. What did you think would happen? Did you really think we'd sit idle while our tax dollars were used to massacre our people, desecrate our holy sites, level our places of worship, and that we then vote for the administration responsible for one of the most egregious atrocities in modern history? Did you think we'd stand by as anyone who protested was silenced, beaten, arrested, and degraded? As the letter from Black Muslim American leaders so powerfully stated, the war on Gaza is a war on Islam. The Muslim American community, a diverse body of people from all ethnicities and races, has decided we will not stand down. We tell you what we told your murderous, complicit vice president when she berated anti-genocide protesters at her rally. Your words will not placate us, your fear tactics will not shake us, and your condescending tone does not intimidate us. This fight is far from over. If anything, the last year was just the beginning. The outcome does not change our path. We will continue organizing, mobilizing, and building within our community. We have achieved this much with only a year of effort. Imagine what we can accomplish with 2, 4, or 10 years. We will put in the work, and we will leave the rest to Allah. There are those within our ranks who attempted to mislead our community, rallying votes for Kamala Harris to protect their self-interests. For decades, these thieves and scoundrels have posed as representatives of our community. In truth, they represent nothing but their own greed. Let us take note of who they are and remember. Today marks the beginning of a new era, one where the Muslim American community ensures that the victims of US imperialism are no longer faceless, voiceless, nameless. For the past 25 years, we were led to believe that staying quiet and keeping our heads down would keep us safe. The tragic attacks of 9/11 happened. We condemned it, yet we were not spared. The illegal invasion of Iraq happened. We stayed silent, yet we were not left alone. The entire region was destabilized. A vacuum opened and chaos was unleashed on our people, and still the world pointed to us and demanded that we condemn the violence inflicted upon us. It is time for the Muslim American community to rise and reclaim its dignity, its integrity, its humanity, and in doing so, we hope every other minority community in the United States will see our example, draw their own red lines, leverage their votes, and stand for their dignity and humanity. In conclusion, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to righteousness, to strengthen our resolve to stand with the oppressed, and to grant victory to those who are crushed by their oppressors wherever they may be. Ameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
What are your thoughts on that powerful statement that was made, sis?
I think it's important to be authentic in the work that we're doing, and it's also important to have integrity and values. But I think it's also important to realize like who speaks for the Muslim community and who the Muslim community also speaks out against. And so I think one of the things that's also very clear is that we need to hold our community's leaders accountable in terms of really you and I are old enough to remember the lead up to the Iraq war. And there was no condemnation at that point from the Muslim community because the fear had set in. And so I think we need to have some accountability because the same people who have been leaders in the Muslim community back at the time of 9/11 and even in the 90s are still the same leaders that we have in place now. And so they're really not fit to lead. And so what this genocide has created is an entrepreneurial sense of mobilization that didn't exist before because people were really fed up with the status quo. And so we have to really demand accountability within the community, but also outside of the community from politicians, corporations, and institutions, and really hold them to the same standards. And I think we also need to see as well that we need to have ethics and transparency in the work that we do, because many of the people who have been involved in politics, especially in the Muslim space, have really been compromised and have been working for personal gain. And I think we also need to see what harm that has caused for the community, and so that's what I think is important, is to really see that we need people to show up and be engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. This is a very challenging time that we're in, and there's a tremendous amount of repair that needs to be done and preparation for what lay ahead. I'm sure that the architects of Project 2025 are right now salivating at the, what they see as the prospects for implementation of some of these objectives that they put together for different parts of the U.S. government.
I mean, before I answer that, I wanted to just step back and go to the issue of Gaza. And so the election was Tuesday, today's Sunday. Yesterday, the country of Qatar decided that it was going to stop mediating a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. It said that there was a lack of sincere willingness from both parties to negotiate. Really, it was just Israel that was failing to negotiate. And so I think what we really need to also recognize is that I don't see any reason to celebrate a Donald Trump victory, because he was the one who put in place the Abraham Accords that precipitated October 7th. And so what we really need to be doing is making sure the Muslim countries walk away from the Abraham Accords. That's what needs to happen. And unless we really have the courage to say and do that, then we're just as coward as we can be.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, lately I've been talking to a few people, a few leaders here in the U.S. With, a little influence, leaders of organizations as well as individual leaders that have some influence. And I've been raising the question of, shouldn't there be some roving protest rallies held at some of these embassies and consulates for these governments in that region, allowing themselves to be be just completely silent on the genocide that's been taking place for over a year now, and or being facilitators of it. You know, those who are allowing their docks to be used. I just saw a report just a couple of days ago about a ship. I think it was one of the European ships. I forgot which country it was. It might have been Germany. Docking in Egypt with weaponry for Israel. You know, you have you know, countries in that immediate area that are allowing their airspace to be used, and you know, various other.
I mean, Turkey's even has dual Israel citizens that are going to fight for Israel.
You said Turkey has this?
Yeah, Turkey has dual Turkish citizens, and so they've been fighting for Israel. That only came out recently. I don't know, and it hasn't really come out more in the open.
Wow.
So really, I think not only they're providing ammunition, but they're also supplying troops as well.
That is so sad and so disappointing that Turkey is one of those countries that is giving that kind of material facilitation. It's just so it's just shameful. It's shameful. And you know, I understand why in many of those countries, especially in a number of those Arab countries right there in that region, why, you know, the folk, the average man and woman in the street is not speaking up and not protesting. I mean, you know, protesting in those countries can result in imprisonment and serious injury or even death. But those of us who are in, you know, Western democracies with a lot more liberty to be able to organize and to speak out, we should be doing that. We should be doing that. We should be the voice of the voiceless. And the fact that there has been a reluctance on the part of some of our leaders to want to consider holding, you know, rallies, protest rallies in front of some of these embassies it says a lot about how we allow what we perceive to be our interests to stand in the way of what should be our convictions. Anyway, that's my feeling about this.
I wrote a piece in the Islamic Horizon magazines, which is the publication of this Islamic Society of North America, and it was titled, you know, what when a mosque has no value. And essentially, we have these brick and mortar mosques, and we also have very extravagant mosques, you know, that are constructed of multi-million dollars. And we have imams that are pulling six-figure salaries who can't even mention the word Palestine or Gaza. And so I really question, you know, what is the value of having a religious institution when it can't even speak up for our brothers and sisters in a way that's meaningful? And what I also see as a concern is how a lot of organizations are more focused on trying to protect their nonprofit 501c3 status than they are about really organizing for change in a way that's impactful. And what you also saw last spring was really the students who were able to galvanize support in a way that was meaningful. And I think that we need to learn from that as a community, and also learn from the historic organizing that has happened in the United States. You know, you showed clips of Howard University earlier on. Howard was founded in 1867, and it really was a bedrock of resistance and dissent following the slavery period in the United States. And so I think people really need to educate themselves, and that's really what Islam offered. To people, and that's really where I think like our moral compass has fallen, is that we've really failed to educate ourselves and educate our communities about Islam, as well as the really the crushing foreign policy, as well as what's happening in our own backyards with homelessness and racism and prisons.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, Sister Nadia, I want to thank you. We are already at the, subhanAllah, we're at the end of today's broadcast. Any final thought you'd like to share with the community before I end with my own closing thought?
I mean, this is a moment neither for despair or a celebration. The election results were really for us lose-lose, and so we really need to see how we can be in a better position, both politically as well as socially. And I think that we really have to do a lot of work within the community as well as outside the community. We have to become more politically savvy, and we really have to take it upon ourselves to really infiltrate these corridors of power so that our voices are heard and that we're not just seen as tokens, and that when we have a seat at the table, we also have decision-making capabilities.
Absolutely. Well said. I want to thank you for joining us today, sis. I really value the perspective and the experience that you bring to the table. In fact, it's perspective that's rooted in experience. I mean, you are a worker. You are someone that has been out there in the thick of this political machinery, doing what you can, as much as you can, to try to make a positive difference. And I really, really appreciate you. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to have you back again for future conversations on this and other related matters. I want to end with this closing thought, inshallah ta'ala. It in part connects with the critique that our brother made in that roughly 5-minute statement that he made to his community. I understand the anger that he expressed. I and many others feel that same anger. But it's important for us to remind ourselves that the critique that he made, it doesn't apply to everyone who preferred to have Kamala Harris as our, as I often would state, opposition for the next 4 years. I wanted Harris to win. I did not want Trump to return to the White House. And I simply wanted her to win because I truly felt, number one, that she would not be as dangerous as Trump is. You know, Trump is a cult leader and he has an enormous amount of power. The Republican Party is his party. It's not even the Republican Party of the Reagan era. It is Trump's party. And so because of the threat that he poses to this fledgling democracy, as well as the belief that, you know, not only is she not as bad as Trump is, she's not as bad as Biden is either. Biden is a Zionist who has been a committed card-carrying Zionist for many, many years. And this is the man who is most responsible for facilitating the genocide that we've seen in Gaza. Yes, he's had a support base that has gone along with him, and she has been part of that support base. But he is the one that made the decisions, and the decisions that he made and he continues to make, they come from a long line of years of being a self-declared Zionist himself, a Christian Zionist. And I truly believed that with pressure, if she had been able to take the seat of the U.S. presidency and been that historic first, that we could have exerted pressure on her for positive change, not just in this area, but in other areas as well. That ends up not being the case. So getting back to the brother's critique, I understand where that critique came from, and for those for whom it applied, especially those who have sold themselves, and this should be a wake-up call for the Democrats, for the Muslim Democrats who have sold themselves, who have allowed themselves to be led by their desires, who have their ambitions, their desire to be on the inside and to be able to rub shoulders with the movers and shakers and to be able to deepen their own pocketbooks. Yeah, this is and should be a wake-up call for you. What the brother said is something that needed to be said to those who are led by their desires, not by principle, not by strategic thought and planning, but just led by their desires and wanting to be, rub shoulders with those who they feel can provide them with the benefits that they want in this dunya. With that being said, we need to begin a process of healing within our community, because we're not going to be able to be unified at all until we can first heal the wounds. Some of us lost a large part of our Islamic adab during the course of this divisive election campaign. We hurled unkind epithets at each other. Words like hypocrite, traitor, sellout, and the like. The accursed enemy of all humanity and his hordes had a field day within our ranks. The 57th ayah of Surah Yunus, alayhi salam, from our sacred Quran. This is the 10th surah of the Quran. It reads as follows in the translation of the meaning. O mankind, indeed, there has come to you a warning from your Lord, a cure for what is in the hearts, a guide and a mercy for the believers. Now, those of us who are truly committed to the deen of Islam, its message, and its people must take the necessary steps toward healing. And toward this end, I will not only restrain violative tendencies within myself, any social media that comes my way from fellow Muslims that attacks other Muslims for the positions they took during the course of this regrettable campaign will be immediately deleted from my social media. I'm just serving notice now. Our time, energy, and resources should be constructively focused on the challenges ahead. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide and fortify the truly sincere within our ranks toward this end. Ameen. And with that said, we close. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihat. Wa tawassaw bil haqq. Wa tawassaw bis sabr. Translation of the meaning. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.